Ladies and gentlemen, European countries have widely implemented and subsequently noted tremendous success from the EPR scheme in the last decade, and the positive impact of the efforts on the environment as a whole has prompted Asian countries to emulate a similar approach. In fact, Malaysia has recognized the need to adopt an EPR scheme to call for greater responsibility from manufacturers and producers alike to improve on packaging by reducing material, as well as focusing on higher recyclability, waste collection, and separation aspects. EPR for packaging aims to reduce the environmental and economic burdens of plastic waste management for municipalities by extending product responsibility to the end of life stage. We have a spectacular line of speakers to discuss further on this today. First, before that, let me just introduce a little on our organizer for today's event. Futurise is a company, a wholly owned subsidiary of Cyberview Sdn Bhd under the Ministry of Finance that focuses on innovation, regulation, and commercialization. The company has been mandated by the Malaysian government through the National Development Council to lead the National Regulatory Sandbox Initiative to expedite regulatory intervention, deploy innovation and technology solutions, and establish new innovation ecosystems. Futurise plays an active role as the public policy advisor to ministries and agencies in developing an anticipatory, progressive, and inclusive regulatory framework that is imperative in shaping Malaysia for the future economy. Its current focus ranges from sharing economy, circular economy, and industries such as mobility, transportation, and sports tech, which includes unmanned aerial vehicles, UAV, and autonomous vehicles, AV. A regulatory sandbox for extended producer responsibility, EPR, is needed for overcoming the issues pertaining to setting up, law, taxation, fees, and etc. Futurise is the only government-owned company that is tasked with the responsibility to look into regulatory impediments and expediting circular economy. The regulations are important so as to ensure public understanding and standardizing the scheme. The sandbox will create a conducive space for key stakeholders to innovate within or outside the existing regulatory framework and allow important insight to be collected and be used for further action and for the betterment of the Malaysian people. Now, before we move on to the main agenda for the event, please allow me to welcome Mr. Sven Schneider, CEO of EUROCHAM Malaysia, to deliver his welcoming remarks.
Okay, thank you, Sarika. Thank you for the introduction, and I think would like to welcome, first of all, everybody to our first regulatory talk together with Futurise. And at this point, my appreciation and big thank you to our colleagues at Futurise, and Rosian is here, and the whole team. Thank you for jointly organizing this event with us, and there is more to come. So this is a great opportunity for us to work together with organizations from the Malaysian government side to discuss regulatory frameworks and find ways to share our knowledge and experience from Europe. And as you have heard, we are talking today about the topic of extended producer responsibility, a concept that is known in Europe already for many years. I think it started off in the 1990s. As a matter of fact, it was a Swede, John Lindquist, who brought up or initiated the concept in 1990, and then it spread throughout the whole of Europe. And as you would be aware, the idea behind it is to basically regulate and help create responsibility for the post-consumer cycle of products. So it's important to shift, to say that the idea was to shift the focus of responsibility from municipalities and the government to the manufacturers and the producers, and thereby allow to ease the government's involvement in this, and certainly also create some ease on the government coffers, I should say. So with that in mind, I would say that the concepts of responsibility have three components: physical, administrative, and financial. And we will hear much more from our competent speakers today. But for me, it's important to share that today is an opportunity to talk about the European experience and how we create a better policy framework in Malaysia. Because in Europe also not necessarily everything is perfect. But I think we had many years since 1990 to make it better and thereby share some of those ideas with you today. And with that, I would like to conclude and pass it back to Sureka. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sven. Okay, so now we move on to the presentation section of the event today. First of all, allow me to introduce Ms. Phang Cheng, Head of Sustainability Advisory Services of KPMG Malaysia. Ms. Phang has over 30 years of experience in sustainability consulting and has led public listed companies through in Asia Pacific, namely Malaysia, Thailand, and Australia. She successfully established and managed performance improvement projects with extensive experience in addressing corporate sustainability needs and a deep understanding of ESG market requirements. This includes developing and improving sustainability management programs to meet the requirements of international investors and benchmarks, such as the Global Reporting Initiative, Dow Jones Sustainability World Index, FTSE for Good Index, Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, and other internationally recognized guidelines. Please welcome Ms. Phang to deliver her presentation.
Allow me to take off my mask. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. After that very long introduction, I apologize for that, it's way too long. We're going to talk a little bit about the extended producer responsibility. And KPMG, as a global firm in Europe, has been working on the circularity, helping companies and SMEs as well as the EU in setting up systems to assist SMEs in the application of circularity and circular thinking, and as well as circular systems in Europe. And with that, we are trying, being a global firm, we are borrowing the ideas and in terms of the applications and their requirements here in Malaysia. I hope this is on. Oh, sorry. Is it not? Oh, okay. Right. So, what is circularity, and what is extended producer? Extended EPR, basically extended producer responsibility. Where we are at the present moment, the way that we are treating our products and our waste is very much a linear. Sorry, technology. Hang on. It's very much a linear system, where we produce what we want, we throw away what we don't want, right? The concept of extended producer responsibility. Can we go back one slide, please? Oh yeah, of extended producer responsibility is instead of, producing what we want and throwing away what we don't want, the idea is to take back some of those waste that we can actually recycle and try and remove it from our ecosystems, whether it's going to waste or whether it's going to be reused in other, basically the idea is to try and reuse it in other capacities or other products. So the idea of using, one man's waste, then, one company's waste then will become a byproduct or a resource to another organization or to other members of the community. Whereas when we talk about circular economy and when we talk about circularity, is ensuring that there is no waste, right? So the concept is it's fairly progressive. You can see as we move from the linear to the recycling economy and the circular economy. And the idea, the leap from moving from extended extended responsibility, product responsibility principles to the circular economy is basically taking what elements that we have in our society, that we have in terms of, ideas and awareness about recycling. The government in Malaysia has tried for many years through its municipal councils and all of that to introduce an awareness with regards to recycling. Right, the government in Malaysia has also tried to enable the recycling of products by allowing places for product take back, and for quite a while we had a very successful aluminium can product take back system, right? But that unfortunately fell down along the ways. A lot of it is actually due to the lack of awareness and the lack of facilities that we have within the generators of waste, which is basically you and I, the general public, as well as for the industrial sector. And in the industrial sector, where it lacks in Malaysia is primarily the fact that our waste laws in terms of hazardous waste management is very restrictive. It doesn't allow the idea of hazardous waste or other types of waste that you produce to be used as a resource. So it is restrictive in that sense, and so the idea of collection, sorting, and recycling, it works at certain parts of the country, but we don't generate the volumes that we need for a high value recycling system that is needed to generate and to drive economic growth in that sector, right? So if we talk about the extended producer responsibility concept, right, we need all these aspects in terms of design for the environment and our market. Where does it go? How do we recycle? Where, at the end of the day, the most pressing question now for a lot of recyclers is where are we going to get our source for recycling, right? And that, to move that sort of thinking in terms of product responsibility down to a circularity aspect, which is basically how do we bring it all together such that we have no waste. What's happening now in Malaysia, although they call it circular economy and circularity and circular systems, they are only operating in one part of circularity. So they take products, like for example, batteries, car batteries or telephone batteries, and then they refurbish them, refurbish, but there comes a time where that waste is generally waste. There's nothing else you can do about it, and we don't have the connectivity within the system to actually take that waste and recycle it into something else. So there are already activities that's happening in Malaysia, thinking about circularity. One of the things which is very popular among the folks and among the general community is about circularity and basically recycling of old clothes and reselling of old clothes, right? But therein lies, there is nothing wrong with that, but therein lies the seed of awareness that's already here in our community. So to move forward, what we need to do in terms of technology, in terms of understanding the what we do and how do we treat waste. We need a realignment of attitudes. Waste is not waste. Waste is a resource. So we need to get ourselves out from what we call the value cliff, which is basically use, produce, throw away, into something which is more useful, which is basically, what can I do? If you talk about the middle bit, about what can I do with my product, right? You think about product as a model. You think about sharing platforms. Let's say, for example, there are successful platforms which, in small scale here in Malaysia, which are sharing products such as handbags, clothes, and shoes, and all of that. They are really small scale, right? But the circularity in thinking is there, right? You talk about track and trace. At this present moment, that's not quite existing yet here in Malaysia. And you sell back, right? Product sell back. So you think you have to start thinking about products as a commodity that you can actually lease. And once that's finished in terms of end of use, like for example motor cars, you take it back to be leased for another customer, I suppose. But these are concepts that you need to think. I mean, we are used to leasing motorbikes, we are used to leasing cars, we're used to leasing trucks, but we are not used to leasing refrigerators. We are not used to, unless of course you're an expatriate, right? We are not used to leasing ovens. We are not used to that idea. We are used to buying. And when something breaks down, what happens to it, right? We have got no avenue left for refurbishing, for recycling. I was reading in the papers the other day in Australia, there was a guy who just moved to Australia, and he was very surprised. Somebody threw away a 42-inch TV screen, and he picked it up, and he spent about 100 Aussie dollars in terms of repairing it, and voila, he had a new TV practically for free, right? And that's the sort of concepts that we need to get over, in the sense that once it doesn't work, it's not worth our while to repair it, we throw it away. But there are, to make a TV, there are a lot of useful and very valuable metals that are in there, plastics that can be recycled, glass that can be recycled, but we don't think about it that way, and such, we don't have the systems that way to actually take it back. Quite a few number of years ago, I was working for a big computer computer manufacturer, and they were trying to set up product take-back systems here in Asia, and the difficulty is the laws don't allow it. The systems that we set up for product take-back and the way that we view the waste makes it difficult to actually generate anything in the form of a product take-back. So actually it's quite timely now for us to talk about this in Malaysia. In the sense, I know I've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to skip ahead a couple of slides. In the sense that we have to understand that, next slide please. All right, we have to understand that there are, obstacles that we face. In Europe, when they started looking at circularity and the application of circularity and the promotion of circularity, they found that, if you talk about your product as a commodity, as a service, if you think about it, right, leasing of handphones, then the only way that we think about it here now is houses and cars and other automotives around. They found that there was problems because then do you treat your service, your product as an asset, or is it a commodity? How do you treat it, and how will the banks treat it if you go as an entrepreneur and you go to the bank and say, I want to talk about recycling and reusing my handphone by leasing it out. And then the first thing the bank will ask you, is this an asset, or how am I going to treat this? So our legal structures, our understanding of financing requirements and the way that it's been set up needs to be changed in that sense, right? The understanding with regards to, like I said earlier, what is waste, what is defined as waste. Is a mobile phone going to be defined as a hazardous waste because it has batteries in there that contains lithium? Interesting thought, isn't it? What about our laptops, right? There are a certain number of recyclers out in Penang, which I visited a long time ago. And, if you recycle that, recycling actually generates waste, right? So in this day and age now, what we also have to think about in terms of the legal structure and the conformity, in dealing with things like climate change, which generates more waste, which generates more hazard, right, in terms of climate impact and all. But circularity is touted as one of the forms in which companies can deal with net zero and move towards reducing their carbon emissions. So these are things that are important to think about, right? And also in terms of how we value the business that has arisen, right? So in terms of looking at laws and looking at legislation, we do need, in the initial beginning, for Malaysians and the Malaysian government to actually start thinking about what sort of legal framework that we need to have in place, and from there move on to the more sophisticated sections, with regards to our financing sector, and with regards to the types of financial instruments, coming from KPMG perspective, we have to talk about finance a little bit, right? Think about what sort of financing perspectives there is, what sort of financing instruments. There's a huge drive now in Malaysia to talk about green financing. How does circularity fall into that? Does that even conform with the idea of our financial sector with regards to green financing. So these are questions that are there, and that does needs to be answered. It's not doom and gloom. In the 12 Malaysia plan, oh yeah, okay, it works now. The 12 Malaysia plan is written that, you know, the government is going to embrace the circular economy, and it is really good because it forms a foundation where we are now thinking about what we do with our waste. And of the region, you probably know this, we are probably one of the highest producers of waste in ASEAN, right? I think we are probably second to Singapore only. Right, when I was working many years ago in university, we had a professor who was looking at waste, and he calculated that Malaysians, about 20, oh, am I giving away my age? A long time ago. He calculated Malaysians generated waste between 0.5 kilos to maybe 0.8 kilos. We are now probably per person in the country generating about 1.1, 1.2, 1.5 kilos, right? We're generating a lot more waste than what we think we are doing. We are not recycling enough. And so circularity and the promotion of circular thinking, it's a good thing, but it needs to be enabled, right? So in terms of moving forward, right, we've had the Malaysia Circular Economy Roadmap. Mind you, it's still very much focused on plastic. Right, we seem to think that in Malaysia, we seem to think that circularity only applies to plastic waste. That's not the case. It's probably developed for plastic because it is the easiest thing that we can see. Circularity can be applied for a lot of things. Many years ago, I think one of the representatives of the company said I was working also at another product take back, and trying to calculate the number of waste there was for waste cartons, for drinks and all, right? To talk about, can we generate the volume for recycling? And that, in essence, is actually where we fall down. Because we don't have the financial structures, the financial incentives, and we don't have the legal structures to basically tell people, you recycle or I'm going to fine you. And that's not happening, and that's happening in a lot of Europe. And I've got relatives in the UK, which basically tells me if you put waste in the wrong bin, you get fined a few £100s, right? And that's what we need. But politically, we also have to accept that that might not be acceptable in this part of the world, since the level of understanding and the level of awareness is pretty low. And moving forward quickly, and I believe the next speaker will probably take this up, we've got a framework that has been proposed by the Malaysian Plastic Manufacturers Association and Malaysian Plastic Recyclers Association. It's a framework that's proposed, and the thing is now, how do we make sure that we are able to enable a certain aspect of our economy to recycle and not import waste? Right, Malaysia, you know, you probably heard in the newspaper before the pandemic, right, before we were all going to lockdown, and while we're in lockdown, that we've been importing waste. And that's the case, and that's the case in China until China banned it. There's a huge value in plastic waste, and it's a huge value in waste that is recyclables, the PETs, the HDPEs, right, and all, but we are not doing anything about it. We are throwing it away. Right, so there is a need for actually studying whether that can be implemented, and in transitioning from the extended producer responsibility to circularity, there's tons of benefits. If I can get on to the next slide, okay, right. In terms of, you know, being able to ensure that we reduce the pressures on our landfills, right, to ensure that we have set up probably a parallel economy with regards to recycling and reuse and the way that we think about waste now. Rather than waste, it's a byproduct and it's a resource, right? And to think about repairing. I see in the World Economic Forum, and I read in the World Economic Forum, Sweden has one of the Scandinavian countries basically has opened one of the biggest recycled furniture and product shop in the world, right? And everything in there is made from recycled stuff, right? You know, if you think about toys, why do we have to throw it away when it could be repaired and probably donated to somewhere else? So that's the sort of thinking that we need to think about. And the way forward is to think about legislation, to think about education, and to think about what we need to have in place to encourage people like you and me to sort our waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phang. Next, we have Ms. Tahirah Mohammed, Manager of Circular Economy for Plastics from Worldwide Fund for Nature Malaysia. Ms. Tahirah works with the Worldwide Fund for Nature Malaysia, WWF, an international conservation organization. She is presently leading WWF's Circular Economy for Plastic engagements, where her main role includes fostering a multi-stakeholder platform for public and private stakeholders in the plastic value chain, aimed at forming actions and goals to shape a circular plastic economy, implementing mandatory extended producer responsibility (EPR) scheme. Ms. Tahirah holds a master's degree in sustainable development management from Jeffrey Sachs Center, Sunway University, and a bachelor's degree in environmental management. Ms. Tahirah, over to you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tahirah, and thank you for the opportunity to be presenting here. And I welcome all the guests today here. Very honored to meet all of you after the pandemic, a long pandemic. So I'm with WWF Malaysia. When I tell people that I'm working on EPR and circular economy and I'm with WWF, the first question that they ask me is, what is WWF doing here? So today I'll be just sharing how are we working, why are we working on EPR, and how are we addressing this from the sustainability or environmental conservation point of view. So, yep, about WWF, we are very long old in Malaysia as well. We have been established since 1972. We are part of the global non-profit organization. And our mission is to stop the Earth's degradation. And we want to make sure we humans can live in harmony with nature. But how are we involved? We are not just working on nature conservation or environmental or wildlife protection. We also want to address the pressing need, which is the growing population and also the resulting pollution, and also the ever-evolving consumption and patterns that we have that results in overconsumption and waste generation. So in WWF, back in 2019 in Malaysia, we started looking at plastic pollution issue, and we took up a project called No Plastic in Nature by 2030. So the way we look at it is that we want no plastic to end up as waste or pollution and harm our nature or leaked into nature. So hence we started this project, and we have three main strategies that we wanted to address at the point of time. First would be to eliminate unnecessary single-use plastics. Second would be we want to see how we can double global plastic recovery. And third is to how we can shift to sustainable sources for the remaining plastics. And to do this, we are looking at three main pillars. First would be on how we can support the policy policy advocacy. And second is business engagement, how we can work with the businesses or get businesses on board to be more sustainable or to work on responsible production and consumption. And that's how we look at EPR in this picture. And thirdly, we are working on smaller level, at city level, where we want to address plastic leakage. So for EPR, what we have been doing in the past years is that surrounding our network across some countries in Asia and also Europe, we are mobilizing government to facilitate EPR discussions on how we can incorporate this into legal framework, especially in Southeast Asian countries. Second is how we are looking at how we can support businesses into adopting EPR and going into circular economy. And third would be like we are facilitating the discussion between the needed parties, be it the government or companies or other stakeholders like NGOs, waste recyclers or informal circles. So we are bringing in all of them to facilitate this discussion. And lastly, we are working in terms of providing knowledge or support in terms of science-based recommendations when it comes to EPR. Okay, so the EPR project scope is not just in Malaysia. We were also working in several other countries like Vietnam, Philippines, and Thailand, and we are learning from each other's journey on moving forward for EPR. So we believe the plastic crisis can be solved by transitioning from the current linear economy to a more circular economy. And how EPR comes into the picture is that we believe EPR has the main characteristics that can make this happen, because EPR can make two necessary changes at two critical points in our packaging value chain, which would be at the downstream stage, where we look at targeting universal setup of collection, sorting, and recycling of waste. And another measure is that by holding producers responsible, we are also steering the motive to hold them responsible for their product design. So these are the two motivations or changes that EPR can make it happen, hence EPR can support circular economy. I do have one video to play. Let me see if I can play this.
A brand is identity. A brand is trust. A brand is everything. We want people to remember our brand, but not for the wrong reasons. A brand should last forever. Our packaging shouldn't. So how can our brand be remembered for being part of an important solution to a critical problem? Step 1, recognize the problem. Plastic waste is one of the planet's biggest problems, and it's only growing bigger. The plastic problem isn't just ugly, it also gets more and more expensive to deal with. Step 2, recognize where our brands play a role. Currently, packaging makes the bulk of our plastic waste, because most plastic packaging is made to be used once for a little while and then thrown away. This amounts to millions of tons of plastic waste annually, like 73,000 blue whales diving into the ocean every year. This is because our collection and treatment systems are unable to cope with the amount of waste we're producing. The collection rate in low-income countries is often below 50%, and up to 93% of the waste is dumped directly in the environment. Step 3, recognize how our brands can drive change. We can help to transform the journey of plastics from a linear to a circular economy. Instead of using plastics that are condemned to become waste, we can reduce using plastic unnecessarily, shift to sustainable sources for plastic, and increase plastic recovery. But no one can do this alone. That's why we can work together through a system called Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR. In EPR, with oversight from governments, the Producer Responsibility Organization is tasked with setting up, developing, and maintaining this system to take back plastic waste from consumers on behalf of all businesses. To make the system work, all producers need to chip in and invest in the EPR. By reducing unnecessary plastic and transparently sharing how much plastic we're using, by taking responsibility from design to the end of life of our products, and most importantly, by supporting EPR and working with governments and other partners to improve our waste management systems and consumer awareness, we can make our brands to be part of a powerful solution. Because our brand should last forever, our packaging shouldn't.
So we have been doing some studies in the past supporting Malaysia and similar countries in this region, and we'll be happy to work with all of you more closely, and I look forward to the panel discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tahirah. Next, we have Mr. Michele Martin, the General Manager of Lisap Asia Pacific, Sdn Bhd. Mr. Martin began his first experience abroad at the Italian Chamber of Commerce in Singapore in 2012, even before graduating. The milestones reached over time led him to be chosen to cover up growing roles in emerging markets, such as the Middle East and Asian markets. In 2014, he took his first steps in professional hair care world with Pertinent Group, handling a portfolio of more than 10 brands and managing over 20 countries around the world. In 2015, he was appointed as an export manager in Asia, leading the group's expansion to Asian markets and laying the foundations for a structural and lasting growth. In November 2020, he was appointed as General Manager of Lisap Asia Pacific with the aim of relaunching Malaysian branch of Lisap Milano SPA Group, bringing back the company to a pre-pandemic yearly growth. Mr. Martin?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks to EUROCHAM and Futurise for giving me this opportunity to discuss about this important topic today, that is EPR. So I'm sure that you all know really well WWF and for sure KPMG, so let me just briefly introduce you our company, that is Lisap. So. Okay, so Lisap was founded in 1952 in Milan and by the Locatelli family. And as you can see on the screen, this year we are also celebrating the 70th anniversary of the group. And the same family is still running the business, of course. And our statement is we do beautiful hair, and there are the plans of the Italian products, plus the beauty that we need to bring to the world, and the beauty of hair that is the masterpiece in our company. Okay, so the brand mission of the company is to create accessible products and services and to build up a strong and professional beauty network worldwide. Brand values are history and innovation, so by releasing cutting-edge products, Italianity and I would say internationality, supporting hairstylists all over the world by leveraging our Italian attitude. And also the latest one is, let me just go a little bit faster. not that much. And product and services. So we are, let's say, all-in-one atelier for the creation, to the production, and to the product and delivery in store. And at the same time, we also support our partners with a constant training and activities about latest trends in the market. So in our R&D department, there are three major words that really sums up the aim that guide any project. That is innovation, performance, and sustainability. So later, for sure, during the panel, we will further discuss about sustainability topic. And we really want to guarantee the maximum protection to our customers, relying on international certification for raw materials such as Cosmos and EcoCert mainly. In terms of production, yes. In terms of production, we do manufacture from liquids to color and to aerosols. That means, talking about, again, APR sustainability, we are involved from plastic to liquid and water consumption and to aluminum. So we are definitely part of the problem, but we want to be also the solution of the same problem. So in terms of quality, we need to guarantee a transparency. This is a key value in Lisap, and that's why our quality and environment management system are certified in accordance to the ISO international standards. In terms of sustainability, Lisap aspires to increase the respect of the environment by upgrading yearly our production processes to save water, gas, and electricity, and of course guarantee the waste reduction. We are also proud of our Lisap garden that contains a total of 500 plants managed with an organic growing method, and we are also including the same plants within part of our formulation, especially the premium ones. And it is something quite unique. There are just a few companies doing it in Italy right now, so we are really proud of it. And today in Lisap, the 80% of our electricity comes from renewable sources. So we recently settled our own photovoltaic system with 136 kilowatt in our factory, and we also settled recently a few units that can monitor the production and automatically adopt the energy saving mode. Okay, so talking about Lisap presence worldwide, actually Lisap products are distributed in more than 100 countries worldwide, and we do also have 5 branches across the world. So Malaysia, of course, Australia, then Spain, US, and recently we also settled a new branch office in Germany. And Lisap, as we said, produced from colors to liquids to aerosols. So we can really cover all market needs, starting from the end consumer to the salon exclusive business. And so, okay, just a view of some of our products. And I would like to briefly go to the next presentation, so I can give you a practical example on what does EPR means to a cosmetic company like us. Okay. So the EPR schemes for, of course, the packaging already exist around the world. We just mentioned Japan, Korea, Chile, and 25 of the 27 EU members are already into EPR schemes. So the EU member states have taken varying approaches, such as collective CPR versus individual producer responsibility, that is the IPR. And some producer responsibilities organization, like PROS, assume only simple financial responsibility, while others do have a partial or full operational responsibility. Some schemes, they charge specific fees for different type of plastic. And let's say only a few schemes do have a more advanced eco-modulation of fees. And the most notable examples today in Europe are ZICO in France and CONAI in Italy. So right now we'll mention you a little bit more about the CONAI experience with our company. Okay, so the European directive goals, the overall goals of the European directives, the 2018 ones, is to improve the EU waste management. And how? There is a concept of hierarchy. So starting from prevention, preparing for reuse, recycling, other recovery, and disposal. That it is the final step that we should always avoid, but of course it is always there. And this waste hierarchy is the one that can really promote a shift to a more sustainable circular economy. So let's go straight to CONAI. So CONAI is the Packaging National Consortium in Italy. And in Italy, this umbrella, the PRO umbrella, so Packaging Recovery Organization for Household Packaging, CONAI provides support and co-financing to public authorities at different levels. So actually the model is based on the principle of shared responsibility. So, and it assumes the cooperation of all participants involved in the waste management. So from companies to public administration, and finally to the citizens that of course in the daily act of separating their waste, they start an ethical cycle for the environment. And the CONAI system is based on the activities of 6 consortia that represent different materials used in the production of packaging, such as steel, aluminum, paper, wood, plastic, and glass. So each consortium, for each material, coordinate, organize, and increase the take-back of the packaging waste, mainly from, of course, the separate waste collection, and the recycling and the recovery process. So the ongoing environmental contribution made by the members provides the resources to CONAI activities. Yes. Okay, so CONAI, it is the connector needed between government, manufacturers, suppliers, municipalities, and citizens. So CONAI provides different kind of supports. Back again? Yes. Provides different kinds of support to local authorities, such as training courses, support for local communication campaign, and support of local projects in specific territories, and especially where performance are lagging behind. It collaborates with regions and provinces, and they also do provide a database and an observatory of the local performances, especially to municipalities to do have a benchmark and understand in which phase they are within the APR application. And CONAI and Okay, so CONAI and Cosmetica Italia, so it is the Italian National Association of Cosmetics, they do have this agreement, and any cosmetic company in Italy that is using packaging, talking about, I mean, from the production side to the commercial side, they are obliged to be registered with CONAI. And registration is not annual or a repetitive event, and it takes place only once, and it will last until the company is a packaging user, so I would say forever. And with the exception, the only exception are the companies that are very recently, I mean, they're recently established in the market. So, back one, yes, sorry. I guess we are both pressing. Okay, so which is the direction, I mean, which are the guidelines from CONAI based on the European regulation? All packaging must be appropriately labeled to facilitate the collection, the reuse, recovering, and the recycling of packaging, as well as to ensure the correct information to the consumer on the final destination of the packaging. So these are the two fundamental pillars from the EU. So as we say, the identification and classification of the packaging, and indication to the consumer which is their role in the process of reuse. Okay, so just quickly, where to report all this information. The most important thing is that the information is visible on the packaging. It can be in the main body, it can be on an internal facade, it can be even digital, it can be a QR code, but the most important thing, you must get the information that you need. And this is an example just for a bottle cap, PP5, or PP5 plus a small drawing about the cap. And also, you must indicate which is the material, that in this case it is plastic. There are also sanctions, and you know, for the violation of this article, there are some administrative sanctions from 5,000 up to 40,000 euros, but they can also increase according to the specific case. So just a quick example, and codes for labeling. So let's take an example on plastic, that of course it is the major material that we are using today in Lisap. So here as an example, you can see the identification of the polymers within the European decision. As you can see now, in the packaging, it is mandatory to include an alphanumeric coding, the one that you can see on the right column, and the European Union also included some specific cases in which there are more than one polymer. So in that case, you can identify the specific polymers with the code 7. So you can, in that way, you know how to handle it as soon as the plastic bottle will be in the waste collection management system. So, and just final, I took the chance to include with this presentation a product. Yes, sorry, yeah. So this is a product that we recently launched. Actually, this regulation, it is mandatory in Italy starting from January 1st, 2022. So this is a product that we launched last May, and as you can see in the packaging, we included all different indications about the plastic we used. So there is the bottle, that is an HDPE2 plastic, the cap PP5, And also there is another statement that is verify how to collect this plastic with the local municipality. That it is actually what it is really making the difference. Talking about Italy, in Italy today the municipality is doing the major part of the whole collection service in Italy. So yeah, all in this indication they are in Italian, but soon for sure if there will be any harmonized system even outside Europe, of course starting from Europe, this indication will be in multiple languages, or at least the codes must be unique for everybody, so they can immediately understand on what we are talking about and what we can do with this packaging. And in our case, we use the HDPE2 that is really easy to be recycled multiple times, and the same with the caps. Then we must do not forget that even the color in the packaging is making the big difference. So it can be recycled multiple times, or it can be something that you must just dispose or find out another way to use the same plastic in a second time. So thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. Martin, and to all the speakers. Now we will move on to the panel discussion with all three speakers, moderated by Mr. Nadarashnaraj Sargunaraj, partner in Zaid Ibrahim & Co. Over to you, Raj.
Hello? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. May I invite the speakers up, please? Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Raj. My full name is actually quite circular. It's Nadarashnaraj Sargunaraj, but it's difficult to pronounce, so Raj will do. I'm a partner in a law firm, Zaid Ibrahim & Co. I head the technology practice. I also co-head the ESG practice. But I have to admit, full disclosure, I don't know a lot about ERP. But that's going to change now because we've got this expert panel here that I'm going to ask some questions. And after this, hopefully, we all come out brighter and more knowledgeable about ERP. EPR, sorry. Okay. Oi Cheng, let me start with you first. Well, actually, what happened to your thumb? I saw you last week and you were fine.
Testing. Oh, okay. Yes, Raj. I poured hot water on my thumb this morning. As I was trying to make my coffee, unfortunately, the boiling kettle fogged up my glasses, and I couldn't see where I was pouring it, and so here we are.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
Okay, so we heard the three panel, including you, speak about ERP. I mean, if you were to explain to simply to a businessman, how would you briefly explain what is extended producer responsibility?
Well, if I were to put it on layman terms, it's basically saying not only are you responsible for your quality of the product, ensuring that you make it to the best quality as per what you say the product is supposed to do. You are now also responsible for ensuring that it is disposed properly, that you know where it's being disposed, and you know what happens when you dispose of it. So, and one of the things that you should actually start thinking about when you talk about extended producer product responsibility is to think about how you can recycle that waste.
And you would start thinking about this if it's a businessman, right? At product inception stage, or as you grow, when would you think about these issues?
Well, if I were to talk about the ideal world, and if I were to set up a business now, to say that I want to make a new product, right? I will start at the design stage. Basically, when one of the key products that actually was looked into back in I'm really going to show my age now, in the early 90s, was how recyclable was a washing machine in Europe, right? So if you don't design it right from the beginning, you're never going to be able to get the elements of recyclability that you need now to, one, reduce the burden of waste that we have in our landfills. Number two, to ensure that we are not wasting the resources that we have dug up to use to make the products that we have, which are not plastic, but some of it comes from mining anyway, right? And number three, you ensure that you reduce the carbon footprint. I mean, circularity now plays a very key role in companies in reducing their carbon footprints. So the main thing of circularity is to use less energy, to produce less waste, and that's where it's all coming up to for now. So yeah, I will start from the beginning.
Okay, thanks, Cheng. Tahirah, may I ask you the next question? Well, I'm a big fan of WWF, not because of myself actually, but because of my daughter. My 5-year-old daughter loves panda, so she said, "Daddy, you have to support WWF. Look at the logo." Yeah, okay.
Well, thank you to her.
Okay, Tahirah, so is it important for governments to introduce or implement an EPR scheme as part of an environmental protection framework? I mean, in other words, is it really imperative?
Yes, because as I was mentioning earlier in my presentation, we are looking at a rise in population and rise in waste. The way we are consuming products and packaging is changing. We are also relying on more packaged goods in our daily life. So this is also kind of burdening our waste management or waste management ecosystem as we go along. And this is going to increase the cost of managing this waste. So, and typically governments been managing this waste with a public budget. So as this is keep going, and we are also running out of landfill spaces. Typically in this region, we are relying on landfills as the way to dispose waste. As this is keep going, we will not be able to manage the land or the rising waste or even the cost of it. So we need to change the way we look at it. So EPR is right because we need more finances to manage our waste, and we need more circular approach to managing our waste, and EPR provides us just that, because we are making the producers or the manufacturers that's bringing in the product to the market also financially responsible to manage the product at the end of the life stage. So once we as a consumer, we are discarding it, so we are also making them part of the system to manage this waste. We are also bringing in consumers to separate the waste or manage the waste responsibly. So this is very important, because looking at current measures, some may wonder, we have voluntary measures, we have companies who have taken up measures. That should be enough. That's not enough, because just by going by voluntary measures by certain companies, it's not going to be enough for us to cover a large-scale financial requirement to cover the waste management part of it. We need a legal framework that makes all the relevant companies or relevant producers mandatory to be part of the system, to contribute and manage it accordingly.
If I may add, I think to summarize it, we need a holistic way in which we approach our waste today. We need to start thinking differently about waste. Waste is not waste. Waste is a resource. Our landfills in Malaysia, half of them are designed, most of them are not. So they're basically big holes in the ground where you throw waste, and it's just rotting away, and it ends up in our water systems. It ends up contaminating our soil. It ends up creating odor problems and pest problems and all of that. So we need a holistic way in which we manage our waste. And we do have a national integrated waste management system added on to that the EPR or move straight, sorry, let's not talk about EPR, but let's jump straight into circularity and the promotion of circularity, and to ease the burden of our waste systems at the present moment. Yeah.
So just following through with that, how do we then introduce EPR? By law or by incentives or with both?
Well, in Malaysia, we already have a voluntary EPR system. It's not working. Many years ago, I did a survey, actually tracked the source of the waste, how it's being disposed, and how it ends up at the landfill. And we have a very healthy dark economy there, in the sense that the municipality workers are actually taking up products from our waste to recycle for themselves. So there is a very healthy recycling system going on, but it is loss of resource actually for the people who finds that this waste has a use. But at the same time, if you take that economy out, you're also depriving the municipality workers from earning side income to increase their economic status. It's not a simple issue. The best way is, and we've tried many years also to talk about electronic waste, white waste recycling. If for those of you who remember how to recycle your fridges and your all the white waste, basically the fridge, the freezers that you had, that was a big failure. So we need legislation now. We've tried, and our municipalities have tried for many, many years, for 20 plus years or so. We need the legislation now.
Yeah, and also if I can add something, relying on funding from public budgets or from voluntary budgets, voluntary contribution, let's say it is proven that it is not enough. It cannot scale, and that's why we must, I would say must, introduce a fee-based EPR schemes. Otherwise, you will not be successful.
In Europe, actually, to add on to that, in Europe, actually, one of the key drivers when the legislation came in, or even before the legislation came in, the EU engaged with the associations, like the Plastic Association and what you were talking about, and with the Copper Association, the minerals, heavy metals, and all of that, to talk about how to make it work. And one of the things which I tried here a couple of years ago, but failed, was because we couldn't get the traction and understanding with regards to how big a role, until we got MP, the Malaysian Plastic Manufacturers Association, on board to look at how the associations can play a role in pulling everybody together, the producers, the end users, the in-betweeners, the resource, the where you get your raw materials from, legislation, because as an association you got economic might and you are in a position to negotiate. But we can't do this individually. You have to include the associations. And actually, I'm going to speak very frankly here. I do apologize for that. The Plastics Association got on board simply because there was too much spotlight on the way plastic is being used and disposed in Malaysia. Not just in Malaysia, but globally. But if you talk to a plastic manufacturer, to talk about recycling plastic, you actually generate more carbon emission, you use more water, as Michele was telling me, you use more electricity, and plus the fact that we don't have a supply system to give us the waste that we need to recycle. So if you don't legislate, what are you going to do?
Just to share also that even in the current system, we see a pattern where the recyclables that has high value are being picked, but the packaging or the waste that has no value or low value, it's not being addressed informally. So we do need law to make sure waste recyclables are being treated, and relevant technologies are coming in to address those we cannot address for now.
For everybody's information, sorry, I don't want to hog but it's something that I've been looking at this for 20 plus years, and it's something that we really need to do something about now. Majority of our waste in the tropics is actually food waste. Now we get a lot of plastic waste because we've been locked at home for 2 years plus. But the food waste, nobody wants it. It's nothing is happening with it. But it goes to a landfill, it ferments, it generates methane as our temperature rises, and that's happening already. The risk of fire actually increases. And what's happening also is a lot of property developers, when they have got landfill areas, instead of clearing out, they just put soil on it, compact it, and then build. So you're actually building time bombs for people.
Okay, Michele, can I ask you the next question? Oh, but by the way, I for obvious reasons, I don't use your hair care products.
You should give us a try.
So why do we need to look at Europe? I mean, what makes Europe's EPR framework stand out from the rest of the world?
Yeah, so as we were discussing at the very, very beginning, Europe started quite early, let's say around 90s, to discuss about how to reduce, reuse, recycle. So I would not say we must rely on Europe way in doing the recycle part, I would say. But we are just one step ahead. So most of the issues we already settled. Some issues, they are still in progress. But of course, you do have a good starting point. And especially the recent directive dated 2018, it aims really to increase the packaging waste recycling. So they are pushing to prevent the generation of packaging waste and to minimize the environmental impact of the packaging. And it is also important in these schemes to set up some clear targets. Otherwise, we just keep talking and talking, but if you don't have any figure to rely on, it is hard to let them effective. So, of course, we cannot think about the next 3 to 5 years. We must do a proper plan up to 10, 20, 30, even 50 years and settle these targets. So we should at least move in the next 10 years up to a 70 to an 80% in terms of recycling. That will be our goal. And then, there must be these policies, as we said, as we have been talking, that they must involve everybody. So from government, from organizations to citizens, we must really change our behavior in handling waste. In Europe, we started to think about waste as an opportunity. That's why we are also, especially in Italy, there are some municipalities, they are performing really well, especially in some northern municipalities. They are already achieving a 70+ collection, and we are not talking about small municipalities, but some even bigger one, of course. So, as soon as you set up a scheme, let's say talking about Malaysia, it is not that easy, and we cannot just copy and paste the Italian or the European model, But of course, if you let the parties discuss and take on board some major businesses, even though considering Malaysia, if there are some major players that are directly involved in these issues, let's take them to the table, and for sure we can find a way to properly settle the exact scheme for Malaysia. It is just a matter of properly design it. So we are talking about design from the packaging side that must be perfect to avoid the disposal of the packaging bottle at the end, bottle or any other material. But then we also must be really careful on how we do design the EPR scheme. So I think this is something we need to really think about, and it will take time. But of course, there are plenty of support from all over the world, and for sure from Europe.
Yeah, if I may add on. Sorry. I think the main thing is here in Malaysia, we are very focused on plastic. But you got to remember, what we dispose is not just plastic. We dispose a lot of clothes. Clothing waste is very high, And the issue with regards to clothing is you can actually recycle a lot of it as well. For us in Asia, I remember my mom used to take all the clothes and T-shirts with holes and then turn it into floor mops, floor wipes and all of that. But that sort of thinking still have gone out the door, right? And we also have to remember food waste is a really, really big issue as well. We waste a lot of food. We Asians, and I include the whole of Asia, we like to eat and we like to waste. Sorry. And then the next thing is, the computer waste. The recycling of computer waste is complex. The recycling of computer waste actually can generate a whole lot of income with regards to removing the need to mine rare earth and other minerals and all of that. Right? Many years ago, I was working with an electronic manufacturer, and they were talking about a recycling scheme, and at that time, rhodium, I think one of the minerals that they were using, 1 kilo of rhodium, they were getting about $75,000 US for 1 kilo, right? And what is the price now? So we're not thinking about this. We are not taking a resource view to the waste that we generate. I mean, I think of the waste that you generate in the old fridges. Where does it go? Like every time I go to my electronic serviceman, I see all these old fridges and I think, what a waste. It's a waste, right? And then all the laptops and handphones. Let's talk about handphones. How many handphones have you got that are waste? I've got about 6 at home. And I still have my first electronic Ericsson brick, So what do we do with all of these things? There has to be a mechanism in place for us. And what Michele says is very true. And as from, WWF as well, we need to think about this. And we don't need to think about it. We should not think about it just as from a plastics perspective, but we need to think about it as a holistic perspective, right? And how do we want to treat it? Think about, the other economic benefits that it could bring, the jobs, the entrepreneurial opportunities, That's the way to go, I suppose. Back to you, Raj. Sorry.
No problem, thank you. The organizers split this into round 1 questions and round 2 questions. I think I have another 2 minutes for round 1. But I'm opening up for the 3 of you before we go to round 2. We just came off from the pandemic. Businesses are suffering, trying to recover, getting their profits back into shape, and they're trying to relook at the business because they took a beating for the pandemic. Is this now a good time to be talking to them about EPR?
Okay, perhaps I can share something here. This is a very tough question posed to NGO.
It was not the list, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, because we do get this question a lot, because we as WWF, when we go advocate for sustainability issues, people ask us this question. This is not the time to be talking about sustainability or circular economy, because we want to focus on economic recovery. So we have been hearing this a lot. So what we usually tell them is that now is the time, because whether we are changing or not, globally everyone else, the other countries are slowly moving towards circular economy. So in a way, it's also business opportunity that we are missing out by choosing not to do anything. Eventually, the supply chain is going to change because there's already a global movement in place. A lot of MNCs have made their commitment, and governments have made their commitment. So be it Europe or even India, we can see a lot of governments moving towards sustainability. So this is going to eventually come down to the supply chain of it. So if we want to be part of this, if we want to move forward with more business opportunities, then eventually we will have to look at this anyway. So it's better now than we miss out the opportunity.
Yeah, I believe it depends on us to understand if it is an opportunity or not. So I believe just after the pandemic, this might be a huge opportunity because, just, if I'm not mistaken, just by shifting at 20% of a single-use plastic to a reusable plastic, the value is like 10 billion USD market. So it is a market that doesn't exist, or it exists, but nobody knows. And even talking about emerging markets, there are some major groups that they are doing already something really interesting. And they are including common citizens within the plan. That means they created a kind of plastic bank in which everybody are involved, everybody are rewarded, and properly rewarded, even at a price different from, they are rewarded above the market price of the plastic, for instance. And it is something that it really can create opportunity, especially on certain specific markets. So I would consider it immediately. And the other aspect is that we don't have any more time, I would say, to wait.
Okay, thank you so much. Unless the organizers have strong objections, I'm going to go to round 2. Okay, no objections. Yep. Okay, so Cheng, a bit of a history lesson. How did Europe start with the EPR regulatory framework? What were the challenges?
I need my notes. I was going to say, actually, the whole reason why SMEs don't understand is because nobody actually gave them a business case in dollars and cents, right? And Nestle, many years ago, I remember them talking about how they redesigned their product. Just think about this. How they cut off from their coffee packaging half an inch from the top, and they saved something like $5 million worldwide. And they saved God knows how many tons of waste, additional waste that was produced, that was disposed in the landfill. Nobody provides this sort of figures to anybody in terms when we talk about why we need to redesign our waste. But the other thing for a lot of, for those of the participants here today, the kind participants here today, we are at KPMG, our advisory, we are getting a lot of queries about embodied carbon in products, right? Basically, if you export to Europe now, or anywhere in America and all, there are some of your clients that will be asking you, how much carbon does this contain? Right? And for those of you who don't know the answer, you have to find out the answer because that could impact how you sell your product. And that's the best business case I can give you at this present moment. Okay, to answer to your second question, the history of it. Okay, I need my notes, hang on. Did Europe start? Well, they started in the early 80s, and I do remember that at that time they were in the EU, and as I was just starting up in my career as a consultant, we were looking at life cycle assessments and life cycle inventories, and deciding and trying to figure out which part of a washing machine. The first thing that they started was with washing machine, which was recyclable, which was non-recyclable, how much water did they use, how much carbon did they emit, and what part of the waste can be used. And they actually had a directive back in the early 80s which covered beverage containers, and that was like our bottles and plastic bottles and all of that. But because the way that it was implemented wasn't harmonized across the whole of EU, it didn't work very well. So it evolved back to the 90s, where the EU directives will come up, and then each individual EU member nation will have the ability to adapt to the requirements of their different country requirement. And that came out, that was, the first one that came out was with the EU Directive 96/62 EC on packaging and packaging waste. So, what Michele said is very true. They've been looking at packaging and packaging waste for a long, long time. And one of the key things that we need to take note is, if I may segue a little bit, is the fact that because the European experience is there, we should be able to take learning experience and case studies which has been developed. If you go to the EU website, there's tons of case studies, and you find KPMG case studies there as well, with regards to the evolving nature of this, and learn and leapfrog and make it faster, right? So since the early 90s, that has happened, and it's been added on and added on and added on since then. So they've been at it a long, long time. We can learn a lot from there.
Michele, maybe following from this question, is there anything from the EU experience that we should avoid? Any pitfalls? Any mistakes that the Europeans have made that we shouldn't follow?
Well, I would say there are not too many big mistakes or something that has been done that we should avoid. And the only thing we should really avoid is to waste additional time. So this is the major thing we should focus on. And yeah, I think today, not making it works, it is not an option. So the APR is something that we really, really must have. And we need to include both, as we said, private and public. That's the most important thing. And we need also to take actions across the packaging value chain, and it can't be excluded within this process. So it is really, these are the major aspects we should focus on. And then we must all change, once again, our behavior in handling plastic, in handling any waste. And we must be conscious because, in our seaside, we still can find, I'm talking about the Italian seaside, there are still some plastic bottle floating, and they dated them like 1960s. So we are talking about...
they came from Malaysia.
Maybe. No, actually, Italian products. So, no, hopefully no. They will stop the journey before.
Sorry, Michele, you mentioned earlier in your comment that it's a public-private partnership that's going to make it work, right?
Yeah,
Again,
definitely.
This is not a listed question, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And if Malaysia, the government of Malaysia were to adopt a
Yeah.
regulatory framework, what do you think is the best approach? That it should be industry-driven, that industry should come up with framework and propose to the government, or should it be the government taking up the initiative and introducing laws?
Yeah, as we said, I think it is a matter of involving the right stakeholders. So the government can introduce a plan, but then it must be discussed and to see if it is workable, because then you need somebody that practically will use it. And if they are already in a specific business, they can immediately understand if this scheme can work, and or if it need to be adjusted. So that's the key. And then you also need a kind of, as we said, some association organization in the middle that must be the glue, a kind of a connector between government and companies. Something that, as it happened in Italy with the consortium, the CONAI that I mentioned before, they are really the entity that can make the difference and that can monitor it. Otherwise, we know from the government side there are plenty of topics that need to be handled daily. So they cannot just focus on the single city or region, state performance. They must assign this task to somebody else and then get the figures about what they implemented, if it is working or not, and which are the performances based on the targets. So we don't need to forget that we need to settle targets. Otherwise, we cannot measure even a small improvement. It will not be measured.
Just to add on to that and to your question, whether it should be government introducing or company or the industry proposes something, I don't think it would work like that, because even if you look at EPR, it involves the whole value chain of products from the upstream to the downstream. So you're looking at production stage, raw material extraction stage, and to the waste management stage. Even within the public sector, there are a lot of different players involved who may not be aware of what's happening in the other stage or other part of the value chain. So it always needs to be done together in a multi-stakeholder approach, where industry, government, different parties of government, be it state government or federal government, we need to look at it together so that it can work in the long run.
No,
Okay, Tahirah. Again, following through from what you just said. Now, a scenario like this. You are going into a lift, and the Prime Minister walks in, and the lift gets stuck, and you now have, what, 5 minutes to tell the Prime Minister should he adopt law on EPR, and if so, how he should do it in 5 minutes.
He's putting the difficult questions to me. Okay. Well, this is really tough. I would ask him. Okay, this is going to get me in trouble. Okay, I would ask
Sorry,
him.
the panelists' views are not attributable to Zaid Ibrahim and co. It's their personal views. As disclaimer before you answer the question.
Okay, the idea. Okay, the idea would be like, it's already in plan, it's already mentioned in RMK 12. My question would be, what's next? What's happening? Are you starting a national advisory committee for EPR? So I think that's what we should start anyway. So yeah, that would be my question to him. I cannot be telling what to do. But yeah, the way we should go at it, at least to start a committee, a national advisory committee, where we have all these different stakeholders on board, and so that we can kickstart the discussions from there.
Okay. Open question to the three panelists. I mean, what can Futurise do to push the agenda to the government, or what can EUROCHAM do?
I think there needs to be advocacy. I think MP, Malaysian Plastic Manufacturers Association and the Recyclers Association have made a start at that. There needs to be advocacy. There needs to be, the government needs to realize at this point in time how serious it is for Malaysian companies, Malaysian manufacturers, and Malaysian parts of the supply chain, what they need to do to demonstrate that they are actually adhering or ensuring that they are reducing the impact on climate. And that is the biggest driver at this present moment, and that's coming out from the EU, and not just from the EU, but also from the American companies, the North American companies. That presentation of the pressure, that presentation of the requirements and how that impacts us in Malaysia as an integral part of the global supply chain, that picture hasn't been built at this present moment. Nobody knows how much money is going to be involved. Right, but if you look, if we were to take a case study of what's happened in the human rights aspect, and if we were to look at Top Glove as an example, public information can talk, right? Okay, right. If we were to look at that and we use that as an analogy, the impact on our economy can be immense. If we are not aware of the precious one to now disclose on our embodied carbon footprint of our products. Number two, on the need to be able to demonstrate that we have recyclability or recycled parts into our products. And if that is not demonstratable in terms of how we have used life cycle thinking, and in life cycle thinking, that's the start of circularity, in reducing our impact to the environment. And we can't do that. Actually, there are sectors now in our economy that are facing such great pressure now that they are doing this sort of studies. But that message is not out to everybody. And we've still got like our SME manufacturers and all who are suppliers to these industries. They are not aware of that. But they are the ones who are going to suffer, because the major industry can turn around and say, hey Raj, I cannot buy your product anymore because you didn't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So the knock-on effect and the domino effect has, and the how do you say it, associated economic inputs and impacts, that picture needs to be painted to the government. And that's the only way that you can move your case across, because it's a pure case of economics at this case. Economics and jobs in this case. And as we are coming out from the economy, from COVID and all, these are opportunities that we need to capitalize on.
Okay, actually that I run out of questions, and as promised to the organizer, I didn't run out of time. Any questions from the floor?
Hi, hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ira. I'm actually a researcher from USM, and I'm also running my small startup to try to avoid the disposable diapers. If you heard about the reusable diapers, that's what I'm doing right now. So, speaking of the plastic, right? Especially this EPR. I totally agree with Mr. Martin that if you ask me, Mr. Raj, if you ask me if I met Mr. Prime Minister in the lift, I would tell him, sir, can we just start to give the industries financial incentives for them to start EPR? Because what I think that why, like Mrs. Oi mentioned that we have started this EPR since a long time ago in Malaysia, but it didn't work, right? Because I think because I'm not from industry, but this is my opinion only, that because industry need incentive from government. So I don't know whether we have any government in here or not, any regulators in here or not, but probably...
Sorry, if I may interrupt. I think our industries are too dependent on government subsidies and incentives. Sorry, but that's my opinion.
Okay, speaking of which, but anyhow, that's what, if you ask me if I met Mr. Prime Minister, but anyhow, regarding the SPR, right, when you said that it doesn't work in Malaysia, but in the meantime, we have e-commerce that's storming us from China. What about that? I mean, like, how can we improve the situation right now? Because at least for the last couple years now, since lockdown happened, we order many things from China. We order many things from not only from China, but from overseas, which required many packaging, plastic packaging. And then it's like, wow, our landfill is like, whoa, which usually can be filled up by 5 years. Now in 5 months, it's already full, right? So this is like really crazy. So my question is, how do we overcome this situation? And to Mrs. Oi. And the second question is about the, I don't know, what about the you mentioned about SME? Have we ever think about the zero waste shop? Can we have any any attention a little bit to zero waste shop? Because this kind of the small startup, they try hard to reduce any packaging, right? I know like the giant company like Nestle, they prefer to sell their own product, but what about they slowly start to support the zero shop, because zero shop is actually selling loose item, as everyone knows about that. So actually, I have plenty of questions, but okay, I give to other person first to please address the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll take your first question. You raised a very, very valid point here, and something that we haven't talked about publicly in the Malaysian EPR scenario is the e-commerce industry. We somehow it's in the side and no one is looking at it yet. But yes, we need to address that. And for example, EPR can be a solution to that as well, because taking from Germany's example, recently they have incorporated e-commerce industry in their EPR scheme. So any e-commerce industry or companies who want to sell their products in Germany must subscribe to the EPR scheme and pay EPR fees as per the product or packaging that they are bringing in. So I guess as a lesson learned in Malaysia, when we are looking at our EPR scheme, we definitely look into this aspect as well. Yep.
Yeah, to add on to that, companies like Amazon and the international distributors, the ones who are ferrying the products like Lazada and what do they use? Lala movers, I suppose. In Malaysia, they are all facing pressure with regards to what they are doing with their waste, and how are they responsible for ensuring that they take back their waste. That's pressure, and that impacts corporate reputation in a way. But to answer your second question for startups and opportunities with regards to investment requirements, there is an organization called All Asian Network Venture AVPN Network, right? And it basically talks about bringing together social impact investors and social impact companies like what you're talking about. And from what I know, that's the amount of funds that's actually floating around. It's a lot. It's there. We can't find, in the region, we can't find enough social network enterprises, social impact enterprises to invest in. Most of them are talking about handicapped, that's not the right word. Physically challenged individuals to run, help them run restaurants and all of that. But innovation in terms of other types of business opportunities is not quite there. So there's that fund that you can get into, and you can actually talk, and they will mentor you, and they will invest in you, but they will treat it as a venture capital. And basically, they will give you a business plan, work together on the business plan, show how you progress, and then they'll invest some more until you are such that you are successful and able to provide a return on investment. So in Malaysia, there is a bank that actually offers and evaluates social impact investing. Impact investing, basically, that's what it's called. And I think it's on CIMB. You can actually check on that as well. And so, when we talk about government incentives and tax breaks and all that, tax breaks I'm all for. But if we are so used to the idea of incentives before we actually do anything, it actually stops innovation, because it means, there is no government incentive, I'm not going to do anything. And when I was starting out as a consultant, we had an incentive fund for ISO 14000 implementation. And the abuse of that fund was so bad that companies who needed it as we moved along to implement ISO 14000, there was no money left. So if you want to set up incentives like this, it has to be thought of properly, it has to be structured properly, that it actually brings benefit and not hinder innovation and creativity.
Any more questions?
Hi, I'm Pauline from Maria, Malaysian Recycling Alliance. So we are a voluntary EPR in Malaysia. We are very new, we were just set up last year. So I have a question for Mr. Martin. Yeah, I'd like to find out more about Kone and Cosmetica. Yeah. And why is it only Cosmetica? Because I'm sure Konai is a PRO in Italy, right? The Producer Responsibility Organization, like you said, connecting the government and also the industry, right? And is there only one PRO in Italy, or there are multiple? And that's question number one. And like you have just mentioned that there is a connection between Konai and also Cosmetica, and why is it only Cosmetica? Because I'm sure Konai has to be responsible for all types of packaging and not just the cosmetic packaging.
Yeah. Actually,
Thank you.
During the presentation, I mentioned you that Konai is covering different materials, so from aluminium, from steel, plastic, and so on. In my example, I just wanted to refer specifically into cosmetics. And actually, I'm sure there are plenty of agreements with all other sectors in Italy. And Cosmetica Italia, just to give you an idea, is the government body of cosmetics in Italy. So it is the official and I would say unique cosmetic association recognized by the government. Then there are, of course, plenty of smaller associations, but the one that are directly dealing with the government is just one. So that's why Cosmetica Italia, that include all cosmetic players in Italy, they are directly in touch with Konai, and they arrange this specific agreement in which if you are part of Cosmetica Italia, you are immediately inside also the Konai program. So you cannot avoid to register on Konai. So you must cover your fees, I would say. At the end, we are talking about that. And luckily, Also, back to the previous question, fees are modular. That means if one company is properly performing, that means they are paying less fees. So it is not, I should not just look to my neighbor and they are producing, nobody is monitoring them. As soon as an APR scheme, that is the advantage of the APR scheme, as soon as it is effective, then it must be also, it must reward the top performing companies in terms of plastic usage or other material usage. So at the end, if, as much it is effective, as much those companies will benefit of the APR. Then of course there are still plenty of differences in the market. There will be some players that will complain. There are the major groups that they introduce in the market tons of materials, while the small one, maybe if you make a comparison, they are paying even more compared to the major groups, compared to also to the spending power or to the turnovers, etc. So I'm not sure if I answered to your question, but in case. Yeah, actually CONAI is the one and the benchmark for the European Union also, together with some other entities across Europe, of course.
We can open for one more question. Okay.
Well, we are speaking about how the solid waste management, especially in Europe, right? And then I don't know whether I'm addressing it right in here, because actually I would like to talk with the Futurise people, because Futurise actually the one who are under Cyberview in Cyberjaya, right? Because I'm from Cyberjaya, I'm living in Cyberjaya, so I'm practicing this segregation of waste, which is waste things. Why? Because at the beginning when I stay in Cyberjaya 5-6 years ago, I start to separate my organic waste, plastic waste, paper. And when I put on my, whenever the municipal coming to collect my waste, they put all together, right? It's like, what the heck is this? So it's like, yeah, come to Malaysia, I know. Recently I just come back from Germany, and then everything everything are comply. Like you said, that if you put the wrong materials into the paper box, that you will get the fine. I know it's not possible to happen in Malaysia, but at least can we just start? I mean, like Futurise or Cyberview, whatever, any municipal in here, can we just start this pilot project first from Cyberjaya? Because Cyberjaya is like a small community, right? It's small, still small town, still can manageable, I think. Can we start it?
They tried that 25 years ago in Petaling Jaya.
But
it lasted 5 months.
I still have a
Then they tried it 15 years later in Subanjaya.
Still doesn't work.
It didn't go very far in Subanjaya, right? Anybody living in Subanjaya? Are you still sorting out your waste? Sorry? Yes. Waste is a great resource in Malaysia. Yep.
Yes. That's my question also.
Well,
Malaysia cannot or don't want.
Yep.
Exactly, that's my question.
Which one of the Prime Minister?
We shan't go there.
Number three, I remember in 2019 when the Minister of Ambient rejected 150 containers and happened tsunami of devastating and also to the dirty, everything, included France, Spain, Hong Kong, Singapore. So this is only question of make understand people. Now, we are also in the, with all respect for all of us, we are also already in the third generation, but we need to educate it from the school.
Correct.
This is the question, because the school is the key point. Key point.
Correct.
Because if I have children and I say, oh, excuse me, okay, all together, Malaysia boleh lah.
No.
Doesn't work like this.
Sorry. I think if we want to talk about.
Sorry, madam.
Yeah.
We don't go so far. This one is provided here.
Yep.
It's not recycled.
So
what we're talking about?
It's recyclable, but it's not recycled. Yeah.
No, could be recycled. It's right in here.
Well,
So-
like I said, the issue is not because, maybe not because don't want to. I mean, like for example, I've been working on quite a few integrated waste management systems and all that for the different states. It is because nobody has actually painted the big picture economically for the government. With regards to how much it's actually going to cost us if we don't do something about this, like what we are talking about, the recycling of waste. What is the opportunities of doing that?
Correct.
Right? The government talks about it in bits and pieces, but we don't talk about it in a holistic manner. And if we, in so long as, organizations like EUROCHAM do not bring this, this is the impact of the legislation out of EU that's going to impact with regards to your supply chain, because how many of the, although we do supply quite little to the EU, right? It's not one of our biggest partners. That picture has to be drawn. And if we look at China and they say that a majority of our products going to China, no need to bother, like China has no legislation. Unfortunately, we don't understand. Chinese legislation with regards to carbon is one of the most advanced in the world.
Yes.
And I've been speaking to manufacturers who have plants in China and how they're actually punitively punished for not complying with Chinese carbon emission and energy reduction products, processes and legal requirements. If we don't understand that and we still think China is going to be a taker of everything, that's not going to happen. And then what are you going to say? As some of the manufacturers will say, never mind, we'll go to South Africa, we'll go to Africa. But how much more of this can we say? Because, just to avoid bringing value to our products.
Correct.
And everything that you're talking about is increasing value of your product and increasing the economic base of Malaysia. Not talking about selling something cheap and cheerful. We're beyond that now. Yeah.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I would like to bring the session to a close. Thank you very much to the participants and to the speakers. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Hope to see you in the next session.
Thank you, Raj, and all the speakers for the very engaging discussion. This marks the conclusion of our event today. Refreshments are served outside, and please enjoy yourselves. As for Futurise,